Hello and welcome to Rage Gaming, and a bit of an Arc Raiders talk today. Basically, I want to talk about a growing complaint in the community, which is about, where's new content? Arc Raiders has been an insane success and has definitely been one of my favorite multiplayer games to date. It's definitely the first time anything has come close to scratching the itch that Tarkov scratches for me. So let me just be clear here, this game is fantastic. I've just been seeing more lately as we go through what you could call maybe a content dry patch. More talk about what's coming, what people want to see. In fact, the lead designer of the game, Watkins, had said in various interviews that they're thinking about these things, working on these things, talking about great concepts. And I noticed with the roadmap reveal, and especially the second expedition and that new info, there's actually been more of a mixed response these days to this information. I think it's a tough topic to tackle because I'm definitely not mad at the devs for the pace that we're currently getting. But at the same time, I do think we could have had more current balance and current mechanic changes. The type of stuff that don't require in-depth dev time, just smart consideration, like mini temporary events as we'll discuss, to just sort of maintain the momentum that they've had. I'd say Embark are definitely poised to drop some new great content, and I have a good feeling that they're going to pull that off with what they've been talking about. But yeah, I do also feel like they've dropped the ball on the momentum for the current moment, which maybe there are ways they could have kept going. So let's go through each topic and get into exactly what I mean. The biggest current critique I think people have is Expedition 2, which definitely as a concept has issues. Off the bat, catch-up mechanics and how you might feel about that aside, they've done the same thing with Expedition 2. They were very clear in this dark gameplay loop, as they called it. They don't want to repeat that. And what they've done is they've literally repeated that. So I think that's pretty bad. It doesn't matter how you look at it. You have to grind stash value and reach the requirement. Now how you do that is up to you, but a lot of people, based on Expedition 1, will run minimal kits to mainly just loot and leave with the value. You'll keep high value items such as upgraded and attached guns in your stash because the slot that they fill is high in value for the overall stash value. That then means you're not using those high value interesting guns or the attachments you find, you're just putting them away in your stash. Instead, you're running minimal kits, and the ever-present, say, sticher remains like an insanely popular weapon because of it. So repetitive minimal loadouts is one thing, but I also think it's very anti-Arc Raiders because if you're a PvPer, right, while you're grinding that 3 mil in this case, you'll want to avoid any PvP for the risk, so you'll do low aggression lobbies. Mostly you'll be going to areas where you're opening containers and selling whatever you bring out. And that's my big problem with the first expedition. It was not a fun system, and it felt like they wanted me to play the game less or in this strange limited way. Based on that alone, I think they need to rework the expedition system for the third one, because while I can be fine with it in the second one, I mean I already had the 3 mil because I was worried about this happening again, I do think that they need to do more than simply reduce the grind, because how the grind works I think is the issue. What should happen instead? Well, there's lots of options, right? I'm not saying my answer's the right one, but just as an idea, the expedition should reward players who are actually playing the game. Encourage you to play the game. So give me a challenge to kill, say, 100 large arc or less or more, hunt the big arc like the queens and matriarchs like 5 or 10 times, whatever. If they dare to encourage PvP, there's a lot you could do there with kill raiders in this location with this gun or whatever it is. But even better than those concepts would be tracking what I've already done the wipe and credit that. So if I've already killed, say, 100 large arc, then I've already met that requirement immediately. I mean, if you wanted to just keep the same boring concept, just track the stash value I've already amassed. That way, if I've already had the 3 or 5 million throughout the wipe, then I've already met the requirement, and I'm no longer obligated to not use my best stuff and do a monotonous chore that is just opening containers and selling what I find. Now, whatever way they choose to do it, I think seriously Expedition 3 should not once again be current stash value. And in fact, I'd hope that never happens again. So that's that aside. We also have the new mechanic, which is the catch-up system. For raiders that couldn't amass enough coins during Expedition 1, we're introducing a skill point catch-up system allowing raiders to reclaim the ones they missed. The catch-up skill points will be heavily discounted, so when you amass the stash value and enjoy your skill points before everyone else, great, but if you fail to do so, the catch-up system will allow you to close the gap over time. For this expedition, you will need to gather 300k stash value per skill point you missed from the first expedition. But you will first need to have achieved the second expedition requirements, that 3 mil, before then each 300k after that goes to the first expedition points you missed. We had further clarification on this topic. Basically, you need to have missed points in the original, which means you needed to be there and have actually engaged with the first expedition, but maybe you didn't quite make the 5 mil. Maybe, let's say you made 2 mil and something, so you only got 2 skill points. Well, now that catch-up system allows you to engage with it because you were there for the first one, and the remaining points you didn't get last time, 300k per, that's the requirement. So let's say you missed 3, you're going to need to get 900k to get them now to sort of recover what you missed out on last time. That's also with the 3 million you need right now, you have to achieve that first. So in this case, you'd need 3.9 million. So there's definitely positives to that concept, but it's still somewhat punishing for the original grinders of Expedition 1. It would have literally been better, you would have been rewarded, you would have had to spend less time not going so hard in Expedition 1. Even just getting 1 skill point, because then you grind less overall with what I believe, as I've just outlined, is a very monotonous chore of a system. I'd like to engage with that as little as possible, and by engaging with it minimally in the first expedition, you're essentially being rewarded for your lesser efforts now. So again, I think the expedition system needs a serious overhaul. Now, outside of that, I've obviously talked about the idea of rebalancing what's there to kind of change things up and add to what's there right now. Things that don't need special development, just some careful consideration. The obvious example of this is a rebalance of weapons. Now, something everyone's said a billion times, so I'm going to be quick about this. You got the sticher, which is overly popular, overly cheap, and overly strong. And they've said they're going to nerf it. They nerfed the kettle, the trigger grenades, and they didn't nerf the sticher. So we're still wondering, like, what happened there? Plenty of other examples exist. Just to throw a couple out, you say the bettina, that's overly weak for an epic weapon. They actually have plans for this kind of concept we'll talk about in a bit. As well as something like, say, the toro shotgun, and how that overperforms compared to the vulcano as an uncommon green. A vulcano is expensive to run, the durability gets blasted, the upgrading's expensive because it's an epic, whereas you got an uncommon green that's cheaper to upgrade, but you don't even need to upgrade it. The shot, and then the roll and the shot is super effective in PvP, even a level 1 toro, so kind of overperforming compared to the vulcano. What you can do then is make these adjustments. Improve one weapon, reduce the value of another. You change the flow of the combat and the meta as we know it. This can also apply to utility items, whether you're making smoke grenades bigger or smaller or last longer. They made this change recently with the trailblazer grenades to make them less ridiculously good against ground arc. So you're no longer able to one-shot leapers with them, you need like 2 or 3 depending on your placement. The much needed nerf to trigger nades was good, but there's plenty of utility items that just aren't that good, like the pulse mine, or maybe the gas grenades in general, that you could tweak to be much more threatening and interesting to actually engage with. Not to mention, take augments and the heavily needed rebalance of what's there. Now, one thing I would love to see that they could do right now is a rebalance of the arc. You could literally make them take more damage or deal more damage. Obviously, that's a very bland way to go about it, but when we're thinking about not developing new content and tweaking numbers, that is a way you could do it. If you want to make the arcs scary again because they're largely solved, you make them harder to deal with. I do think there's definite downsides to making an arc take more to kill or deal more damage. It's not necessarily more fun, that is it? But you could instead do a temporary event, like they're doing right now with the sort of shared watch event. During this event, what if they made it so all the arc are more tanky or deal more damage? Then it's just a little bit different, and they get to practice with the rebalancing and then take away if it is annoying before too long. Obviously, in regards to new content, there are little things we do know, such as, the whole data mine of Toxic Swamp, a probable event, probably on Down Battlegrounds, probably in the, the swamp area. Whatever that could be new materials, new utility items like they did with Stellar Montis and Trailblazer and the Secret Grenade and so on. You could get like powerful gas grenades from that location. They could engage with nature as a threat beyond just the arc as a threat, let alone a swamp specific arc or something. But outside of that, we do know about, say, from the roadmap, a new arc threat is coming, and we're going to get some sort of map update, which sounds interesting to me because you can take like a map that exists right now, just slap in new areas like we've seen with Tarkov maps, slowly expanding and adding depth and detail to the maps that we have right now is also a good way to go about things. Technically, for new content, we had the Cold Snap return, which is essentially recycling a special event. I actually think that's good because more content is good no matter what. I think it was a fantastic event. I think it's just kind of a shame that they didn't have anything to bring in with the loss of Cold Snap. Now, for planned new content and like semi-confirmed stuff from all the interviews that we've seen, there's a lot that's now been talked about. Arc variants is probably my top one, where they're going to take Arc and create new versions of them. So you might have a bastion that moves differently to a normal bastion, or it has a completely different gun than the machine gun that it has now. What if they took a wasp or a hornet and changed it from, say, the taser shots to a single little rocket shot? Not quite as strong as a rocketeer, but, you know, comparable or interestingly comparable to that. It would change the threat, that's for sure, and it would also mean we haven't solved that arc anymore and we need new strategies to deal with it. I think it's a great thing. But flashing through the others, you know, you've got a loadout system coming, so setting up your loadout will be easier if you have like a preset. Walkable Speranza, they've talked about the idea of that hub being a place you can physically go because it's such a cool location. Have other players in your party hanging out there or something. They've also mentioned the rebalance potential of weapon rarity. They said it's possible they might change some weapons' rarity to help balance it better. So obvious example of that, the bettina. Plenty of people feel like it's not strong enough, but imagine they took it from its epic quality and lowered it to rare. Well, now that weapon is cheaper to run. It's more reliable to run. Maybe it works better in that category. They've also mentioned the potential of PvP focused special or legendary weapons. Right now we don't have that with the three that we have, since they're very anti-arc, so that could be interesting. And they've talked about the idea of high investment raids, like the higher rollers of Dark and Darker. We now have the solo versus group matchmaking, so maybe that was their way of testing new matchmaking systems. The idea of a higher roller system is cool as hell. Like the people that are about to load into this raid, you know they all met a minimum requirement that their loadout actually costs, making that PvP run a lot more high risk, high reward or something. They've also confirmed trading mechanic updates, basic stuff like, you know, putting a gesture out to offer an item, you can grab it from someone's hand, a bit more physical nature to it. As well as a skill tree update where they've acknowledged that certain parts of the skill tree are basically irrelevant and never picked, and they need to do something about that. So maybe with Expedition 2's patch, Copium, we'll see something like that. And then obvious stuff like, yeah, new arc, new massive arc, new weapons, other equipment, and new maps in general. All of that's coming eventually. The last topic and suggestion I like the idea of is player voting though. They've not talked about this, but I would love to hear about it. Other major games have done voting systems. I first saw this with old school RuneScape, where the devs put out a community poll like semi-often about new additions they're thinking about. And then they only implement the additions that are highly voted on. I think it's like 70% of the player base that vote have to be positive about it before they'll do it. But the fantastic MOBA, Deadlock, I play the hell out of that game. Valve have just finished releasing the next big batch of characters. So 6 characters, 2 come out every week, and the players would vote on who comes out first. It's just cool. So if Arc Raiders did something similar, they could put out a post semi-often asking, here's the things we're thinking about working on next, which would you want to see first? Or if it's a new idea that might happen, the idea needs to reach a certain minimal amount of votes or percent amount of votes before it actually happens. I think that's a great way to do live games. The players have their voices heard. It's good for the devs to know what the player base actually wants, and what's great about it is you have to play the game. It's not some post on Twitter that was popular or an upvoted post on Reddit, but the players in the game with their in-game voting. So yeah, I love that idea. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this chat. I hope people don't take this too seriously, but I want to ask you guys, do you feel like new content is super needed right now? Or maybe you prefer the idea of just rebalancing what's there that would do the job? Or, you know, you're completely fine, still actively playing, and when they drop new stuff, great, it's all good. Let us know what you think, but until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.